Hello, welcome to Faith in the Fog. My name is Isoken Aderele. On this YouTube channel, I talk about all things midlife, perimenopause, menopause, and navigating the transitions in seasons and how we as women can navigate through the different seasons in life. Although I speak about midlife, I talk broadly about the different seasons that women navigate through and how we can walk through those seasons. So in my last video, I talked about the importance of staying connected in midlife, why it matters. And I also spoke specifically about staying connected in seasons of transition, grief, and change. I also talked about the fact that as human beings, we were never designed to do life alone. And in today's video, I want to talk about the how of staying connected. So in the last video, I talked about the importance of why we needed to stay connected, but in this video, I want to talk about the how to stay connected. Because let's be honest, knowing that you need people and actually maintaining those relationships and those connections in midlife can be two very different things. So I want you to think about this, right? So you have a desire to remain connected, but perhaps you've moved cities, you're in a new place, a new country, new location. Maybe your friends are at different life stages, so compared to you, their reality is very different to your reality. Or maybe you are in a season where everybody feels so busy, including you. Or maybe, and this is one that's usually very difficult for people to talk about or to admit, you're in a season where you are tired, right? We talk about being over-peopled, out-peopled, just cannot deal with people sometimes. And so maybe the idea of texting somebody, making plans, showing up, being on all the time feels like another chore on your already long to-do list. So today I want us to be a little bit practical about what do we mean by staying connected and how we stay connected when life is already full and your friendships seem to have shifted, you're going through so many different things, and quite honestly, maybe being on your own feels a little bit easier. So let's talk about it. The truth of the matter is, sometimes the friendships that felt really effortless in the past, maybe now they require a lot more effort. Because the reality of the matter is, we're not in university or college anymore, where it was so much easier to see the same people every day, right? In those circumstances, it was so easy to maintain connections or friendships. And speaking about seasons, you might be in a season where it's not so easy to be connected, right? So think about if you're a mother, when your children were younger, it was so much easier, shall we say, to connect with others, through play dates, other parents in your children's classroom, and you were able to create communities or connectedness that way. And also it could be that you've moved, right? You're not in the same city, town, country, continent even that you were a few years ago. And so because of all the way life has shifted for you, life has changed significantly, that you're not as connected as you were previously. Also counter to that, right? Maybe you're in the same city, maybe you're in the same job, maybe you haven't moved, but your current life phase is different, right? So it could be that your children are older, right? So your children are not young, maybe you're an empty nester, maybe your work has shifted, right? Maybe you have more responsibility, you're in leadership roles, or you're even taking a step back in your career because of sort of personal reasons or whatever. Your body absolutely will feel different at this phase of life, and your capacity is different. And in the context of friendships, some of the people that you used to be close to maybe you've outgrown them, right? Quietly outgrown them, or noisily outgrown them, or perhaps they've outgrown you, right? And nobody really talks about how sad and awkward that is when you outgrow relationships. And how does that happen? How does it happen such that people that we were close to, connected to, we're no longer as close to them as we were? Well, maybe we stopped reaching out. I think we're maybe all guilty of doing that. We've had friendships that have fallen to the wayside because we've stopped reaching out. Or maybe we're assuming everyone is too busy, and then we tell ourselves, you know what, I'll reconnect when things settle down. Maybe, and this is where I'm particularly guilty, maybe we spend our time, rather than connecting with people, we are doom scrolling on Instagram because we love the reels, or we're binge watching either another crime show. Again, put my hand up for being, that's what I do. So binge watching another true crime show, not just any kind of crime show, true crime series, or watching a series on television rather than texting or connecting with the friend that we've been thinking about for some time now. And before we know it, we are actually functionally isolated. And we can be isolated even where we're surrounded by people all day long. The truth of the matter is, connection in midlife, and I think in many seasons of life, requires a lot more intention than used to. Now, it could be that you're someone who's always been the first to reach out, and then you maybe feel guilty when your friendships fade, or you're someone who wants a deeper connection, but you don't know where to start or how to start. This is why we're having this conversation today. You're not alone. As we navigate this season of midlife, and I'm speaking specifically about midlife, but I know that this is true in so many seasons, especially when we're walking through challenges and challenging life situations, a lot of us will quietly outgrow some friendships and also then feel sad and guilty about it, because these are great friends that we've had, but because of life's challenges we've just remained not so connected. And maybe we want new friends, right? But we're at an age where it seems awkward to start making new friends again. I use the analogy that it feels a little bit like dating. You're trying to make new friends at an older age, and it's like, oh, do I want you to be my friend? Can I be your friend? Will you be my friend? Do you like me? It's a bit like dating, right? So that in itself can feel really hard. But the question that I have for you, in as much as we may feel, isolation is easier, it's, not a lot of fuss, it's just, I can handle things myself. But I want to ask this question, and this is where, getting to the how of staying connected is really important. So the question for you, if something hard, difficult happened to you tomorrow, who would you actually call? Do you actually have people that you could call that could walk you through that season? So I want you to pause and think about this question, because this is why staying connected is important. Because as I said in the last video, we're not meant to do life on our own. We need to stay connected. And we also need connection, especially in seasons where life can be a challenge. Now, I want to walk through how isolation shows up in our day-to-day life, because it does show up in so many different ways. And as I talk through this, I want you to think through where isolation may be showing up in your life. So isolation can show up at work, and it may look something like this. You stop collaborating with your colleagues. So maybe you were known as a team player, but suddenly you start to draw back and you stop collaborating. You stop asking for help. It's like, it's so much easier if I walk through this and I solve this myself. So much easier to do that. And so at work, you start to feel like you're on your own and I can do it all myself. That's one way isolation shows up. It can also show up at home. And this seems like a juxtaposition. How can I be isolated at home? Well, it does happen. You can be isolated at home, and it can show up in situations where you stop speaking to your spouse about things that are going on, right? It's like, it's easier for me to manage everything by myself. I'll just deal with it. That's one way isolation can show up at home. But when it happens in that way, you'll find that it can be that you're filled with resentment, because you're carrying the weight of certain things and you're not able to show up as your true self with your spouse, and that causes resentment to build. Now, of course, if you're isolating at work and you're isolating at home, isolation is going to show up in your body as well. So how does isolation show up in your body? It shows up through stress levels. Your stress levels will increase. Your sleep will suffer. Maybe you're carrying weight physically as well as metaphorically that you were not meant to carry on your own. So when you isolate, your body keeps score, right? So it's keeping score by raising your cortisol levels, your sleep is suffering, and you are carrying this weight that you were not meant to carry by yourself. Isolation can also show up in communities, whether that's your faith community, exercise community, where you volunteer, whatever you do, the kind of faith practice that you adopt, right? So for me, I'm a Christian, and so isolation may show up in a way. For example, you stop going to church, you stop serving, you stop volunteering, you stop showing up in small groups, and you convince yourself that you don't actually need the church community anymore, and you can do this alone. Question for you. As I've talked through these three examples of where you can where typically isolation shows up, I want you to ask yourself the question: am I isolating at work, in my relationships with my spouse or my family, or even in my community? And do I think that I can do certain things alone? Spoiler alert, you can't. We're not designed to live this life on our own. We've been built for connection. And connection is not a luxury, absolutely not a luxury. It's a lifeline. Now, I'm going to talk about practical steps for reconnecting, but I want us to discern what's actually going on when we're looking to isolate. Okay, so as I've talked through the examples of how we isolate ourselves, I want you also then to ask some more questions of yourself to determine whether you're actually isolating and pulling yourself back, or if this is a natural recalibration of your life. Because the reason I say this is there are actually instances where you do need to recalibrate your life and look at your circle. But I want you to ask yourself these questions honestly. Is this withdrawal, or am I isolating? Am I withdrawing from relationships that no longer serve me or are draining to me, or is this isolation? And also in that context of isolation, is this actually isolation, or am I being introverted? Because we want to ensure that we're not mistaking introversion for isolation. I like to talk about things in seasons. So another question you can ask yourself is this a season of pruning, or is this a season of planting? Am I pruning those relationships that no longer serve me, are draining, are difficult, not pouring into me? Or is this a season where I am planting, creating relationships in my life that are going to serve me? And am I serving others as well? Because this is not one-sided. Relationships are not one-sided. Am I planting in people's lives as well, or are people planting into mine? Am I over-functioning in some relationships and thereby under-investing in others? Those are the questions I want you to ask yourself, because as we navigate connection and being connected, it's important to remember that we don't need a massive social circle. We don't need 5 billion, 100 million friends, right? I don't even think that that's possible. But we do need somebody. Ideally a few somebodies, right? We do need a few friends, true friends, those that will show up when you need help, that will lift you up when you fall, the kinds of friendships that will not let you disappear, i.e. they notice that you're drawing back and you're pulling back and you're isolating, and they are taking steps to pull you back in. Those are the types of connections and friendships that we need. How do you stay practically connected? Here are 5 things you can do this week to start rebuilding or maintaining the connections that you've had. And this is even if you're tired, even if it feels awkward, even if you're not sure where to start. 5 simple steps that you can take today. The first one, I want you to reach out to someone you've been thinking about. Not later, not in the future, today. I want you to text them or call them, ask them how they're actually doing. I don't want you to wait for them to reach out to you first. I want you to reach out. And please, I don't want you to overthink. I don't want you to overworry. I just want you to do it. I'll give you an example. And this has happened to me a few times lately where I've learned that, I really do need to reach out to people when I think about them. And it happened to me recently where, somebody had been coming to my mind. I kept saying, I really need to call this person. I really need to talk to them. And I didn't. I really didn't. And after I got that, let's call it prompting, after I got that prompting a few times, they actually called me and said, you've been on my mind and I wanted to know how you've been. And then it was then a back foot for me to say, you know what, you've been on my mind as well, and I should have called you. It was quite an awkward conversation because I truly meant it. They had been on my mind for a long time, but for whatever reason, I put it off. Now, the reason I say this is if they're coming to your mind, if you're thinking about them, very likely that they're also thinking about you too. So don't wait for them to reach out to you first. You reach out, reconnect with them and see how they are doing. You'd be surprised how many people are waiting for somebody else to make the first move. The second thing I want you to do or to think about doing is to audit your friendship. Now, when I say the word audit, it sounds so formal, so corporate-y, but really we should be taking the time to audit our friendships and audit our relationships. So what do I mean by audit your friendships? I want you to write down the names of 3 to 5 people who you feel are life-giving. By that I mean they pour into you. It's a relationship that's reciprocal, it's safe. They are your people, right? They show up for you, you show up for them. I want you to think of 3 to 5 people that are your people. And when you've identified them, I want you to prioritize these people in your life. As I said earlier, you don't need 500 million friends. You just need a few friends that are available to you, that pour into your life, and you pour into their lives as well. Now, if you can't think of 3, that's also okay, but at least have 1 or 2 people that you can think of and that you can pour into, and likewise pour into your life. The third thing I want you to do is to say yes to something social, even if you're tired. Now I know you'd rather stay at home, lay in bed, watch a crime show, that's if you're me, scroll on Instagram. But sometimes we absolutely need connection. And in order to be connected, we actually need some social engagement. Very recently, I was talking with somebody who was coaching me through some questions that I had. And they challenged me in this area of being socially connected. And so I forced myself to say yes to 2 events that I would typically not have said yes to. And I actually went along to these events. And you know what? I had such a great time at both of these events. I made new connections, I made new friendships, and then I found, people that I had things in common with. So I want to challenge you to think about saying yes, not just think about it, actually saying yes to social engagements and social connections. So it could be a coffee date, a small group, a work happy hour. So say yes to a social event at work. Stay connected with your work people. A church event, it could be anything, right? I just want you to show up and see what happens. You don't even have to stay long, right? You don't have to stay long at this event, but just say yes, go out there, be present, and have a good time. The fourth thing I would like for you, the fourth question that I have for you, and the fourth thing I want you to do in the context of staying connected is to be honest where you are. What do I mean by this? If somebody asks you how you're doing, I want you to try to not say, I'm fine. You don't have to overshare, but you can say, honestly, I've been feeling a little bit, disconnected lately. I feel isolated. You can say something that is honest about how you actually are and see how they respond. Because that's also a clue as to whether these are people who want to stay connected with you, who can stay connected with you, and who will allow you show up in your real, authentic self. And number 5, or finally, I want you to pray about it. I'm a Christian, and so I use prayer and my belief in God to help me navigate a lot of things. And I find that we can ask God for the types of friendships and the types of friends that we need. So my 5th challenge for you today is to pray about it and ask God for the friends that you need. Ask Him to also show you where you've been isolating out of fear and exhaustion. And then also ask Him to help you to be the kind of friend who's also available to people. Because when we give and we're open to giving to people, we create capacity for people to do the same for us as well. So as I close out this video today, I want you to remember something, that the fog of midlife, or even the fog of any difficult season, makes everything feel so much harder, including friendship. But this doesn't mean that we're meant to walk through life alone. As I said before, we're not meant to isolate, we're meant to stay connected. And in order for us to stay connected, it doesn't have to be so daunting. We can start small. We can reach out to people. We can say yes to social engagements and social events. And we can be honest about where we are today. And above all, we can pray and ask God for the friendships that we need, and also to be the type of friend that's available to show up for people in their time of need. As I close out this video, there's a reminder that I have for you, and it comes from Scripture, and it says that a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. It's a cord of 3 strands representing friendship, connection, etc. But for that cord of 3 strands, it needs to be woven first. In order to create that connectedness that's not quickly broken, it needs to be woven first. So my encouragement for you is to start weaving those friendships and those connections that will see you through difficult seasons in life. I would like for you to drop a comment and tell me what's the one thing that's made it harder for you to stay connected in midlife. Let's normalize staying connected. Let's normalize showing up honestly. Let's normalize staying connected with the group of people who see us and are available to us and want to pour into our lives. And let us also normalize pouring into other people's lives. And if this video has landed with you today and you found that it's blessed you today, I want you to share it with a friend who might need to hear this. That way, they can also learn how to stay connected as they go through seasons of fog, whether that's a midlife fog, whether that's a fog in the middle of a challenging situation. This could be a blessing to them. I hope this has blessed you. I'll see you next time.